What is going on, Colts Nation, and welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice, your guys. Of course, Cody and Derek back with another one, guys, and hope everybody's doing well. We wanted to talk about a topic here that just recently our friend Dustin Adams brought up and wasn't able to get Dustin on to talk about this, but figured we'd talk about it all the same, Derek. He brought up the idea that he believes the Indianapolis Colts should bring back, he calls it a familiar face here, a player who was with the Indianapolis Colts back the last couple years, ever since he's been drafted. Of course, talking about Julian Blackman. And Derek, Julian Blackman's still out there. It's May. You know, we see guys all the time, you know, who wait to get drafted, who, you know, there's some time where, you know, teams kind of wait till after the draft to see, hey, what are some of our needs that we didn't necessarily address in the draft? And when you look at the Indianapolis Colts, Derek, one of those positions was that safety position, that third position there at the safety room, because outside of Cameron Bynum, who you obviously signed in free agency, and Nick Cross, beyond that, Derek, to call the depth poor, I think is putting it lightly. I mean, you have legitimately no guys back there that either you, number one, trust to stay healthy, a la Daniel Scott, or number two, trust to play even at a semi-competent level, a la Rodney Thomas. So all that to say, it's hot garbage behind your two starters right now. There's really no clear-cut answer. I mean, depending how you view Hunter Wohler, I think a lot of people would say linebacker for him, but maybe he could play safety. I'm not sure. But Dustin suggests the idea of bringing back Julian Blackman. And Derek, I look at this and I say this makes some sense because Julian Blackman, while yes, it's a new system with Lou Anarumo, Julian Blackman has history of playing both positions here at safety. He has the free safety position, which he played when he first came into the league, and then the year in 2023, where he had probably one of his best seasons as that strong safety. So what are your thoughts there on just this whole idea? And should the Indianapolis Colts, in your mind, consider bringing back Julian Blackman here to potentially even compete for that starting strong safety spot with Nick Cross, or at the very least provide some quality depth?
Yeah, so obviously he went to be a free agent this year, wanted to test out his market, and, still has not signed anywhere, which is definitely a surprise to me. I thought that he would have been somewhere by now. Felt like somebody would have gave him a contract that he would have liked and or, some place that he would have been okay to play in. But yeah, Julian Blackman still on the market and, probably the best safety still left on the market at this point. No doubt that he will continue to probably field offers, as the year goes on, like in the off season, is because some injuries might happen or some guys might get cut that were surprises. And then, he squeaks his way in there with a new contract, right? But you're right. When it comes to Blackman rejoining the Colts, from the Colts standpoint, this makes all the sense in the world to actually do it because it doesn't matter about the money. Like his market value based off of what other people are saying was around $8 million. I don't think that you'll have to give him $8 million for the year for him to come in. You might have to give him something somewhat close to that, but I don't know. You're not going to get him for a long-term contract. You'd probably get him on a 1 or even potentially 2-year deal going into it, but you wouldn't have to worry about the money because even after the Indianapolis Colts put their $8.5, $9 million, whatever, how much they're putting in the money for the draft picks, which hasn't been put into the cap space just yet, you're going to have somewhere between $14 and $15 million. So ultimately, the money-wise, that's not an issue. So don't have to worry about that. And secondly, like you said before, yes, it's a new defensive system, but you're right. Julian Blackman has had the luxury of being someone that has had experience in both aspects of it, being at free safety and at strong safety. You're right. One that when he transitioned to strong safety in 2023, his 2023 and 2024 years we saw his statistics shoot up, like skyrocket, compared to what he was doing at free safety. Albeit last year had some inconsistencies with the tackling, especially. And yes, it was a lot of it had to do with injury, but still, had the inconsistencies. Regardless of that fact, regardless if you're a Colts fan and how you feel about Julian Blackman being on this team as a second or third safety in this defense is still a way better option than anything else the Colts could do from this point forward. Remember, they didn't address it in the draft. So right now, you have Daniel Scott and you have Rodney Thomas, we've seen him fall off, and Daniel Scott has never remained healthy. So having a Julian Blackman in there who is familiar with all of these guys and is, regardless if he's familiar with Lou Anarumo's kind of defense, that doesn't really matter. You can mold him into that, and he can be a useful guy in this aspect, because just because he's the third safety doesn't mean he won't see the field. There's lots of times where Lou Anarumo puts 3 safety looks out there, especially when the throw is coming, and Julian Blackman has accumulated 10 interceptions over his 5-year career here in Indianapolis. So the guy does know how to get after it. So all in all, I mean, it just makes all the sense. Now, will Julian Blackman ultimately want to come here, Cody? That's the big question. Does he want to come back for less money? I'm not sure about that right now.
Right, and playing for a third different defensive coordinator in his time in the league, is that something he wants to do as well, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there are some similarities in the defense. There are also a lot of big differences. So that is kind of the ultimate question is, number one, does Blackman have any interest in coming back and not being guaranteed a starting position? But again, also, devil's advocate would say it's May, so he's not really going to get an opportunity up to this point, probably. I mean, it'll probably be at best a chance to compete, right? But also the fact of you do have a new defensive coordinator, you do have a new DB coach, entire defensive staff outside of one. So did they even view Julian Blackman as a part of their defense that they want? Like, do they think that his skill sets fit what they want? Don't know the answer to that, but that's kind of the biggest thing. But when you're strictly looking for Julian Blackman as a player, Derek, that's just been the biggest question, has been the injuries, right? That's been pretty much the biggest question, because when Julian Blackman's been healthy, which has been, kind of 50-50 up to this point, when he's been healthy, he's been a really good player. Like,
yes.
When he was very healthy in 2023, he was really, really good for the Indianapolis Colts. So I think if you were to bring him back, it would be understanding that more than likely you're not going to rely on him to play all 17 games fully healthy. That's just the reality of it, right? So if you did bring him back as potentially, say he does, you do bring him back and he beats out Nick Cross for the starting strong safety position. Okay, you still have Nick Cross in there who's played good football for you as well. And more than likely he's going to see the field because Blackman hasn't stayed healthy, right? Or if he's a third safety, you think about that, you cut his snaps in half, say, from last year. Like, will that just help him be more durable down the stretch? Is he more of kind of that role guy at this point, right? Where he doesn't play 80, 90% of the snaps, but when he does play, he can be effective because he's not relied on and he's not expected to play that amount of snaps. So I think that would make sense from that standpoint. But again, there are multiple factors. It does take two to tango. So if either side doesn't feel like it makes sense, I totally understand. But it is just a name that was thrown out there, and I definitely wouldn't be opposed because, as much as I thought Julian Blackman didn't have a great season, again, you talked about the injury, I do think that when he has been healthy, he has been a good player, and I respected him for playing through that injury, despite the fact that it obviously hindered him a year ago. So I'll be so intrigued to see, though, what the Colts do, because I think they have to do something of some sort at the safety position, add some sort of depth in there, because they just didn't do that. So I'm wondering if they're kind of relying on, the remaining safeties here, potentially one becoming available, whatever that looks like, and bringing in somebody else. I think that has to be the play at this point, because I don't think you could roll out there trusting that we know the history, Derek, like of just the NFL in general. I don't care if Cam Bynum has been super durable. I don't care if Nick Cross has been super durable. The reality is it's a tough game, man. It's 17 weeks. you can't go into a season with virtually no depth at this position. It's just not a thing that is wise for you to do. And Ballard has done that before, Derek, where he has gone into seasons without properly addressing the depth at positions, and it's come back to bite the team. So you absolutely can't afford to do that if you're Chris Ballard in the Indianapolis Colts, because, Derek, you made such a concerted effort this year to really improve that secondary. But, if one injury happens to any of these two safeties right now, you could be in a world of trouble if you're the Indianapolis Colts. So you absolutely need to address it. Julian Blackman would make some sense there. But, guys, what do you think here in regards to Julian Blackman? Would you like to see a reunion with the Indianapolis Colts, see him back with the Colts here in 2025? Again, this is a guy that, former third-round pick, he's had his moments. So what do you guys think? He's still fairly young at this point. Would you like to see him back in potentially a limited role or competing with Nick Cross for that strong safety position? Let us know all those things in the comments down below. But, guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it. And as always, guys, go Colts.